Welcome to the Executive Forum at Purdue University's Daniels School of Business. I'm your host, Dave Randich, lecturer in the Strategic Management Department. Each episode, we invite accomplished executives and thought leaders to share their experiences, from building careers and navigating change to taking risks and shaping the future of business. Today, we welcome Dan Elmhurst. He brings an in-the-arena perspective on leading large, distributed technical organizations through rapid change, from advanced memory technologies and SSDs to the rise of assisted engineering and cloud-scale computer. Join us as we connect today's students with the insights and inspiration that drive tomorrow's leaders. Dan, welcome to the Executive Forum. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And we mentioned you're an electrical engineering grad, but beyond that, you've got all kinds of connections to Purdue. Tell us about your whole Purdue story.
So I come from a long list of electrical engineers. My dad and my uncle are twins, identical twins, which was fantastic. Is that better? Electrical engineers. So within my family, my whole family went to Purdue. So like a lot of folks here, I was good at math and science, and so I applied to Purdue. My dad and my uncle were electrical engineers, but my dad's Purdue grad, dad, mom, brother, aunt, uncle, cousin. My wife, I met my wife here. She grew up in Carmel. Her mom, her dad, and then her brother, her sister, and then I have three daughters. I have one daughter that graduated a year and a half ago, and then I have two daughters that are here now. One that's a freshman and one that's a junior.
So that's commitment.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Florida, and it was great. I'm a big believer to kind of get out and see different places. So growing up in Florida, it was good to come here. And then in being in California, where we live is Sacramento, so it's kind of a little bit of the northern part of California. I wanted our girls to kind of get out of California just to see something different. There was something to be offered in every part of the country, and it was good to come to the Midwest. One of the things that I love about Purdue is when you get here, the whole experience is the campus. There's not a lot of city to go out to, so you really get engulfed in the campus, the sports, the activities, your fellow students. I loved it. It was great for them to come here, and I'm excited for my two daughters that are here now.
So Dan, you got the double E degree at Purdue, which is not easy to achieve, by the way. And then you went and had a long career at Intel, AI, chip design, and now you're the CEO of an AI startup. What's your story? That's an incredible journey.
Yeah, so I graduated in '96. I got a job right out of college with Intel and spent 3 decades there. And you read a lot about like NVIDIA today. NVIDIA is just a behemoth of a company. When I joined Intel was that of the industry. Right. And one of the things that's great about Intel is all of the different diversity of work that they do, from manufacturing to computer chips, to software, to building racks. Really just a hugely diverse company that invested in a lot of different areas. I started as an individual engineer, working as a chip designer. And then ultimately I got into management of the design team. And I led a design team for about 20 years, bounced around a different set of groups doing different startups inside of Intel. And then I did Xeon for the last couple of years.
So you're kind of at ground zero for AI and innovation. And you mentioned to me yesterday a quote I used in an earlier class today about innovation that's on the wall in the lobby at Intel. Tell us about that and background to that.
Yeah, so one of the things, if you go back, Intel has a long history on being the forefront of a lot of innovation, especially around foundry and technology innovation. And so one of the founders is Robert Noyce, and he has a famous quote that says, if you're not at the forefront of innovation, it's hard to see what's coming next, and you're always chasing. And so now I will start by prefacing, a lot of folks in the room might go, well, that's great to hear from an Intel guy. I've been there 30 years, but you're getting killed by NVIDIA. I will stand here to attest, Intel has never lost a strategic decision inside of the marketplace. Now, we have overinvested. We have backed out of the initial strategic decision. I mean, you can go back and Google this. We bought a company for Nirvana, Habana. These are billion-dollar companies that we bought in the AI space. But one of the challenges that Intel has is sometimes we overinvest in what we think is true. And we have a challenge of sometimes we invest too early and too much. As a business, it's really important to make sure you're getting into the right marketplace, but you also have to make sure you meter when to get into that marketplace. There is such thing as too early, and how much you invest. And at times, Intel has gotten in too early, invested too much, then eventually pulled back, and they missed the market because of that.
And we're going to come back to AI in a moment, but we've got a lot of young students, heavy towards seniors in this auditorium here. What is your message for students as they go out into the world? And I know you've done some behavioral training that you can shine a light on.
Well, one of the things, I teach this career development class inside of Intel, and I've taught it a little bit outside of it. One of the things to always keep in mind foundationally is your credibility is built on your skill. Okay, there has to be some skill that you have that you build competency from, and from that competency you build the credibility. So there are two things I'm going to say that are going to feel like extreme opposites. One end is, in today's day, you have to have some foundational skill, either in engineering, in supply chain, in doing deals, assessing businesses, engaging with customers. You must have some foundational skill that you build from. And these courses at Purdue should entail you and enable you to go do that. The second thing is the other side is in this environment of today with AI. So one of the things, I'll give you my own personal story and then I'll relate it to today. When I joined Intel in 1996, one of the things I had to realize is when you're a student, you're judged based on the work that you do. And so there's always a high priority in the integrity and the accuracy of you as an individual. As soon as you join a company, you have to put that hat aside and say, the company just cares about, are you getting work done and making progress and generating results faster than what the competition is doing? So in my case, that was really about leaning into collaboration and how do I work with other engineers to help solve a problem faster. In your generation, there's going to be an additional tool at your fingertips, which is AI. And you're really going to need to be well-versed in how to use AI to enable you to do your work faster. Now, as you heard from the announcement earlier, there's no AI for your paper allowed, but when you get into the workforce or you get an internship, you want to get out there and you want to use these tools to your advantage. Now, make sure you know the corporate policy about how do you protect the IP and the proprietary information, but you need to be well-versed at that. I'll give you a personal story I was relating to Dave. Before I left Intel, I led an engineering team, a global engineering team of 900 engineers. When you're leading a team like that, you are every day spending your energy in driving direction, leading people, setting the pace, in meetings. I didn't have a lot of time, as I would say, with my hands on the keyboard. And so I saw the ChatGPT moment a couple of years ago, and I was pushing inside of Intel on how do we go embrace these tools for what I call everyday engineering. And we'll come back to that in a moment, but the point in that is in my current role, one of the reasons I wanted to step into the startup space is I wanted to get back to where my hands were on the keyboard. Because in this day, the ability I can do research about a competition that would take me a month of research before I could do it in a day today. And so you're going to want to be well-trained. Pick your favorite tool, whether it's ChatGPT, Claude, whatever is your favorite tool. It should be something that you should be practicing every day and how you use those tools. Not just simply, hey, how do I bake a cake? But how do I go research a company and how do I go learn from this? Because when you get into a company, it's going to be about how do you have the velocity to generate results.
And so let's get specific about what a 22-year-old ought to be doing with AI. Should we have subscriptions to Claude? How deep should we go into this?
It's a good question. A friend once described to me as your job is like your trade. And if you think about like a historical trade, say you're a craftsman, say you're a carpenter. And a carpenter will often buy their own tools because it is the tool that you're using and you're investing your own money in to build the best cabinetry the most efficient way. And so sometimes you have to invest and spend your own money, not necessarily your parents, but if your parents will pay for it, fantastic. But yeah, you should get a paid subscription. There is only so much you can do with just the free subscription. I'll give you an example that I do. I'm putting together a pitch deck. I'm a CEO of a startup. We're looking for Series A money in the next 6 months. And I want to think, how do I visualize this PowerPoint? And I will literally take all of the points I want to make, I'll drop it into ChatGPT and I'll say, make it a cool graphic of this information on a slide for an investor. So I give it the right prompts and it generates a graphic that I'll then convert into a PowerPoint a bit manually. I haven't quite mastered beautiful.ai. It's supposed to be a PowerPoint tool that helps a lot, but I'm not great at it. but I use it in that way. So back to your question, if you don't have a paid subscription, they're not a lot of money, $20. Take one or two less Starbucks, go buy yourself something that's going to invest in your craft for years to come.
I like your point about you're a craftsman and it's your tool.
Yeah.
Now, over the weekend, I was playing and I wanted to test a Gemini because it's so advanced now. And I went in and I researched a company I used to run over the time when I was there.
Yeah.
So it gave me a lot of really interesting information very quickly. And I was fascinated by it, but there was a lot of false information in there. Mm-hmm. And it says, this is AI, we're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
So I've got 40 years experience. I've got an advantage there.
Mm-hmm.
How about somebody who's 23 going to work at Intel or NVIDIA? Yeah. How do they use AI, but make sure they don't get in trouble by using bad information?
Yeah, so the biggest pitfall that you could find, in my opinion, so there's somebody in the room that I met today who's going to go get an internship at Intel, and they were asking me some advice, and I gave them a couple pieces of advice. I'll give another advice. It's probably true if you go to anybody here goes to, especially any kind of engineering-based company. Engineers love to find data inaccuracies. So you put up a wall of numbers, even if it's off within the decimal point, they'll point that out. So I think the biggest pitfall is to fact check numbers. So AI can say, hey, and in the business school, what's the market size? What's the TAM? What's the SOM? What is our market share? Anytime you put a number, you want to make sure that you fact check that number. And that would be, because that is all about your own credibility. I think for creative tasks, it's very safe. But you want to use it as an accelerant, not as the answer. And that's how I use it today, is I accelerate my work, but it's not the answer that I'm created. And I'm always fact checking because that will damage your credibility really quickly.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, let's go back to the behavioral stuff. And the first thing you mentioned is when students go out into the world, we want to have a skill. We got to be good at something. We got to be grounded foundationally. And you were managing 900 engineers. What's that like for you? How do you gain the respect of those engineers?
Yeah. In case I forget, I want to remind them about a story about your job is bigger than you think. And but in case I forget, I'll come back to that. And communication. Okay, those two things. So with engineers, that's the whole world that I live in. Your respect is really built on competency and credibility. So your credibility, is built on competency. So you have to go in and make sure whatever you're working with. So I'll give you my own personal life. I've moved from chip design to using agentic AI. I lead a CEO 1 month in. So I am like the new college grad here, 1 month in agentic AI chip design. Now my foundation of chip design, I did 2 decades of it. So I can speak the tools, the language, the lingo. I've literally built circuits that have sold, 1 billion different chips in the world. It's really impressive. Sorry, that sounds like I'm I didn't mean it that way. It is impressive, but I didn't mean it sounded that way. Like, I'm so awesome. My apologies. But one is I have a foundation and I can speak the language. The second thing is I run every day, and I think you asked this last night, uphill trying to learn what our product is. So there's a very shallow view you can look at anything, but how do you dig deeper and deeper and deeper into it so that you are getting closer and closer to the engineering? You all may not be engineers in this room, but you are all very intelligent and you can close the gap between the fundamental physics or engineering that's happening and what your knowledge is. And so number one is I spend a lot of time doing that. Number two is you show up. It is incredible, as much as we have phones and AI and texting, the ability to show up and look at somebody and say, hey, let's talk about your problems. Tell me about what you're working on. And engage with folks. So when I first joined, I joined this group that I led called the Platform Architecture, Integration, and Validation Team a couple of years ago. And the first thing I did is I just went out and I talked to people within the team, hundreds of people. And I jokingly say, as a leader, your job is actually pretty easy. You just have to do 3 things. You ask people what's broken. And it's shocking, engineers and all people love to tell you what's broken. Number 2 is you ask them how to fix it. And it's kind of incredible that people have ideas on how to solve that problem. The leadership part is really only in step 3. Go and do something about it. Now, what you'll find as a leader that there will be overwhelming number of problems to go fix. So you have to prioritize. But when you make that commitment to do that step 3, you earn that credibility. And then the last 2 points I want to make is about one of the great skills you want to practice is this idea of synthesis. As your career grows, your ability, next time you join a company or you have an internship, go watch the most senior people in the room, okay? Their ability to synthesize data faster than anybody else in the room to see what you're telling me, what does it mean for the direction we want to go. It's an incredible skill to have and to practice that synthesis. But synthesizing information is not enough. You must be able to communicate that in a concise, clear way. And then if you're a leader, in an inspiring way. So practicing those communication techniques where you're coupling competency with data synthesis that you ultimately can communicate for action, having that ability to do that is really incredible to help your career grow. The best leaders can take very complex topics and make them explained very simply.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we talk about competency. And the CEOs who come into this forum are always telling me that, well, the world's changed. Years ago, in my era, companies would hire good students and train them. And now we're looking for students to walk in the door with skills. I mean, not 30-year-old skills, but walking and being able to do something.
Yeah.
And so you've talked about how you immerse yourself in your domain and you learn it and you learn it. How do you make the next step to synthesis? Is that more experience or are there some techniques to synthesize information?
Yeah, I guess I never really thought about how I've done it myself, but a couple techniques that I do. One of the great techniques that I have, I described already, is I talk to a lot of engineers and I talk to others within my domain or even in adjacent domains. And it's kind of incredible how you can make connections. And you have to start, so a couple things. One, you talk to people. And in talking to people, you try to understand their problems, their challenges, and how they would go fix it.
Is this email or text, or is this talking to people?
This is talking to people. This is 100% talking to people, sitting down. It can be in small groups. It could be one-on-one. But you're making connections, and you're staying attuned to what are they saying that can connect a dot to help me to something else later. Yeah. The second thing you do is you have to be a continuous learner. The world, yes, it feels like it's moving fast, but it was moving fast when I graduated also. So you have to invest in continuously learning. I got my MBA 7 years after graduating from Purdue. I went to Stanford. So when I first joined, I had an undergrad and I was surrounded by people with masters. I was super intimidated. So what did I do? I started taking classes at Stanford. Electrical engineering classes. And so you have to consistently be immersing yourself in new data and new information. And then lastly, you got to just do the work. Like you cannot underinvest having your hands on the keyboard or hands doing the work or in the field talking directly to customers. You have to do the work. And together, you'll start to build a competency that you can then make connection points to other areas of how you pull things together. And I'll say the last thing, a technique that I used once I became a manager is I had 3 levels of meetings. I had one-on-ones. Okay, let's sit down, let's talk. And then I had what I call bunch for lunches, where I said, hey, let's all go out to lunch. Let's go to lunch, and let me tell you about some challenges. And what I would do, and then I had the third level is I'd have all open forums. So the whole group would be there. So at the bunch for lunch, first at one-on-ones, I collect ideas, what's going on, what are the challenges that you see? And then at the bunch for lunch, I would always start it off with what I call my State of the Union. What do I see as the challenges of today? Now, it serves 2 purposes. Purpose number 1 is I practice. Like you're in a small, safe group. And by the way, I literally tell the audience, like the small bunch for lunch, I said, I'm going to practice what I think is where we want to go so that 1, does it resonate? And number 2, if I'm wrong, correct me. I literally tell them that. And so I go out there. So then by the time I slowly build this synthesis of information, then when I stand in front of either, a board of directors or a leadership team or the whole open forum, the whole team, I can speak with incredible confidence because I've tested this at 3 different levels.
And so you've talked about mastering your domain and then being vulnerable as a leader and opening up in your communication style. We talked a little bit about the opposite of this behavior, the F word, the fraud.
Yeah.
In the world of AI and engineering, what does a fraud look like?
Well, I think, so I'll answer it a couple different ways. I think if you rolled back a year or two, if somebody submitted, this is maybe very inappropriate to say to a bunch of students at Purdue.
No, we can take it.
But I think there was a point in time where somebody could look at something and go, that looked like AI helped you. And I would say a year or two ago, they'd probably say, I'm going to ding you for that. I think I met with somebody who's an investor advisor for me. And he admitted, hey, I apologize, AI helped me generate this. But I think the pivot is going to start to happen to be more like, well, it's good that you used it because it helped build a foundation. You're not wasting your time, you're accelerating your time. And so I think that usage of it will pivot, that persona that, oh, because you use AI, you're a fraud. I think that's going to disappear. Mm-hmm. You always have to add your own intelligence on top of it because it will always be too general. I think the other elements of just, I'll distinguish, there's always this idea of an imposter personality, okay? You're gonna join your first job and you're gonna be like super intimidated, And I think you just have to push through that everybody knows you're learning, and the more you embrace, I don't know everything, the faster you're gonna learn. And so please just, push that aside. I mean, even myself, I face it, but you just have to grind through this. You get in front of customers, you get in front of teams, you get in front of engineers. And as long as you are humble and you project that I don't have all the answers and you welcome feedback for correction, people will always rally around you.
And listening, right? Listening. And
listening is huge. And then I think for engineers, don't ever try to over communicate your expertise because they'll see through it. If you're like, trying to drop lingo and trying to like demonstrate that what they're doing, they'll see through you, and that will lose your credibility.
Yeah. And so Dan, let's move now within your behavioral education that you do for people. Let's move to your job is bigger than you.
Yeah.
Tell us about that concept.
So the backstory of this is I won an award from the electrical engineering department in 2001. In that, the James Eaton Design Award for Excellence. And the goal of that award was to encourage young engineers to stay as engineers. And so I won that award, I came back, and I figured they had a session like this, but it was for all of their graduate students, their masters and PhDs. So the graduate students were one, undergrads were in the other. And they said, hey, come in and, I assume they want me to talk about something in technology. And they said, no, talk about your career. So again, it was one of these moments where it's an opportunity to step back and think differently. And so I said, well, there's a lot of career development classes. What am I going to do? So I put together a class that was called the Behavioral Approach to Career Development. It's, about 10 things, the behaviors that make me unique that I believe have accelerated my career. So I would tell the behavior, I'd tell a personal story, and then somebody would, then work on a worksheet. I have a couple that you've heard all before, like, hey, never stop learning. There's another one like find a mentor. And I distinguish mentor, different than a sponsor, But a couple that are unique to me, one of them is your job is bigger than you think. And that's the idea. And on the slide, if we had it up on the screen, would just be a circle inside of a bigger circle with some arrows from the inner circle pointing to the outer circle. And then ask people, what do you think it means? Your job is bigger than you think. So I don't know if we're allowed to be interactive, but let's be a little interactive. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Be a brave soul and guess what do I mean with this idea that your job is bigger than you think? Somebody in the back.
You have a larger effect on your company than you might already assume.
So you have a larger effect on your company than you assume.
It's a great answer. And so I'll build on that just a little bit. You'll go into your first job or maybe 10 years down the road and you'll think, okay, my job is in this box, okay? You'll be amazed at how far you can stretch outside of the box before somebody will look at it and go, wait, Dan, why are you here? Like, I'll give you a couple examples. We were building this new memory technology and we were looking at it for the data center, for laptops and desktops, and for cell phones. And so at the time we were partnering with a company, Huawei, out of China, to go see if they could put this technology in. And they invited me to this meeting to do a very specific task. What is the maximum memory capacity can we put into a specific package size? Okay, it's a task. I came in, I presented it. While I was there, I soon realized that they had all sorts of other structural problems working together, a lot more architectural issues that they had to go solve. Like, hey, what are the read performance, the write performance, the bandwidth, the whole board layout? I said, I can help with this. And I slowly started to help. And before you know it, within a month or two, I was an active participant and oftentimes leading the team in what we were going to go do. And so it's a very unique skill that I've employed, that when you go into your job, every company wants to go as fast as possible. If you're willing to put the effort in, your job is always bigger than you think. And at times, there'll be your core job, which you always have to be successful on. Like, make no mistake, whatever is your job, your core job, kick ass at it. Like, be the best. But there is always adjacent things that come up that could look totally orthogonal to what you're working on. Lean into that, find that, and it will create new opportunities that you will never have thought were possible.
And Dan, before we wrap up, tell us about your new startup and what problems you're going to be solving for your customers.
Yeah, so after 3 decades with Intel, I knew I was going to leave in the summertime, and I started thinking about, what do I want to do next? My MBA is from Babson. Babson's kind of claim to fame is entrepreneurship. While I was with Intel, I was part of Xeon, what was in my introduction the last couple of years, which is a big, Intel franchise. But for the other 27 years, I was basically, in the startup side of the things that were inside of Intel. Was part of like getting into the memory business, getting into the SSD business. And so I wanted to go back and do something in the startup land. And I started networking. And I can talk during the Q&A about, well, what does good networking look like? But I wanted to start business. And so I'll give you the short story, and then I'll give you the longer one in a minute in case we have a hard stop at the top of the hour. So I went through an interview process. I got hired as the CEO of an agentic AI chip design company. So chip design has many phases to it. If you don't know, you start with a silicon wafer. You then have to go do a design that you put on the wafer. Your phones, your laptops are just full of computer chips, different types of chips. You do the design, you tape it out, it goes to a factory, you then test it. That design phase has 4 major components: architecture design, verification, physical design. And so, the lowest level is you have task agents that can do specific tasks. Like in verification, build me a test bench on how to go verify this circuit behaves the correct way. And then each domain, those 4 domains I mentioned, they have multiple tasks underneath. So not only do we have a robust set of task agents under each, but the movement now is into agentic AI, where you have each domain can manipulate a number of agents underneath to orchestrate what a task would normally be performed by 2 or 3 engineers. One agent can manipulate across these unique expertise domains. And then we have a manager agent that sits on top that then can manipulate the 4 different domains across it. So I started a month ago. We are a small startup with some really super smart PhDs and myself. And the goal for this year is really around win customers, get testimonials. It's the greatest thing that you can go do. Go deliver compelling technology as measured by usability, usability, and feature complete. And then last, let's go raise some money. And that's what I'm doing.
Well, Dan, thank you for joining us today at the Executive Forum.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks for tuning into the Executive Forum. To learn more about how the Daniels School of Business is helping students and organizations shape what's next, visit us at business.purdue.edu. Until next time, keep learning, leading, and building the future of business.